If you're investing in property or planning to, the next budget could change everything. Thresholds, pensions, stamp duty, it's all on the table. So in this video, I'm going to cut through the rumours and show you exactly which changes matter and how they could hit your portfolio. Before the 2024 general election, Labour promised not to increase income tax, national insurance or VAT for working people. And I go working people because they seem to want to change the definition of that. In recent weeks, Chancellor Rachel Reeves has given strong indications that she would increase the tax, a move that would have broken Labour's election promise not to raise the basic, higher or additional rates of income tax. But of course, it's not like a politician to lie to get voted in, right? However, after another famous U-turn moment, she's decided not to proceed following estimates suggesting a gap in the public finances is £10 billion smaller than previously thought. Can we just pause for the stupidity for a moment? They just happen to realise that we're £10 billion better off. I'm not here to judge any government, of course, as we yo-yo along, wrapping our heads around one reality, then another, to another. Uncertainty always creates stagnation and fear, not just in the economy as a whole, but across a whole range of industries. And the UK property market is not shielded from this, quite the opposite. And if it isn't income tax that's getting hit in the autumn budget coming up, then what is it going to be? And how could each potential change impact property investors in the active market right now? And that's what I want to explore today. Here are my top 5 predictions and the impact that it's going to have on you. Let's start with income tax. And within income tax, I want to put national insurance within that. Now, the commitment from Labour was not to increase tax on working people. But what's a way that they could tax you more without increasing your taxes? Therefore, they've not lied. Well, there's 2 ways that they can do this. They could extend the freeze, which I'll speak about in a moment, or they could lower the barriers of when you start getting taxed. So you might not know this, but I'll give you a little 30-second lesson on tax. The first 12,500, and we'll do them as round numbers, is tax-free. So you've got a tax-free threshold at that point. Then from 12,500 up to just over £50,000, you are a 20% taxpayer. Then from 50,000 to 125,000, you're a 40% taxpayer. And anything above that, you're 45%. That is the average way of doing it. So if you earn £50,000, you don't pay 20% tax on all of that. You pay it on the 37,500, so the 12.5 to the 50k. Okay, we're covered there, but what about national insurance? Well, they didn't change national insurance, did they? Yes, they fucking did, just not on us as individuals. What they did is in April 2025, they made it 15% national insurance for employers, not employees, on employers, and they started charging it at £5,000 instead of £9,100. Let me explain it in simple terms. Employers were paying 13.8%. Now they're paying 15%. You might go, well, it's 1.2%, not a big deal, right? Yeah, but 1.2% from 13.8 to 15% is around an 8% increase on taxes. You might go, damn, that's actually quite high, but it gets worse. We didn't actually pay it on your full salary. We paid it on everything above 9,100, but now we pay it on everything above 5,000. So that 4,100 difference is about another £600 per year, just on that part, by the way, just on that part of your salary, per person every single year. You might think, I don't give a shit, that doesn't impact me. Yes, it does. If a business's profit margins go down just by employing you, then what's going to happen? Well, first of all, pay rises, very unlikely, because that could have been in your pocket, but now it's in the government's pocket. But on top of that, it makes less sense employing you, because I can employ somebody from a different country for way less money anyway, cost per hour, and I don't need to pay national insurance on there. Now, the reason I'm saying that is for you to understand that the government doesn't need to increase your taxes in order to tax you more. So one of the ways they do this is with national insurance. The other way is by reducing the thresholds at which you pay tax. Now, the reason why I bring this up is up until 2028, the previous government froze what those allowances and bans are going to be, which isn't good for you. Now, typically, if you earn 50,000, you might expect to, I don't know, earn 52,500 next year, right? But inflation means the value of your money is lower year on year, i.e. your purchasing power. So you can buy less with your money tomorrow than you can today. Hopefully that all makes sense. And so if a government freezes the bands, what that means is your tax bands should be increasing in line with inflation, i.e. you should be able to earn a little bit more each year and not pay more tax. Explaining it well? Hope so. It should be happening, and the freezes are a very temporary measure, which is basically saying, hey, look, I'm really sorry, but I need a bit more money because I need to keep this place running. And once we do it, we relax it. But the Labour government have not committed to unfreezing it. And so not only could they freeze it for longer, but they could reduce those bans. The outcome is, pound for pound, with real money, you will pay more tax. So how does this impact you? Well, let's face it. If we don't want to hurt the working person, let's be blunt about it. Let's say I'm in the top 1% of the UK, which is about earning $250,000 a year. Now, I don't want to be a dick here, but if I'm earning top 1% money, which is who we're meant to be impacting, right, for the redistribution of wealth, if I'm earning $250,000 and you're taxing me 45% above the 125, and it really should be 45% if you'd allowed for inflation at 150, making those numbers up slightly, do I really give a shit? I don't want to sound like a dick, but if you allowed it to increase, then me as a £250,000 a year earner, I'd be paying 40% of that extra 25 grand difference, but now I'm paying 45%. It's really not impacting somebody in my situation. So who does it hurt, Labour? Oh my God, the very people you're meant to represent, i.e. working class people. Because if you're earning 30 grand, and then you've got that lower tax bracket, let's say the 12,570, which is your tax-free allowance, which should be 15 grand. Well, you're now paying 20% tax on that 2.5, which is £500. Now, I don't know about you, somebody earning 30 grand a year, that £500 net in your bank every single year, that would benefit most people at that level. And so actually what it does is it reduces purchasing power at the working class and middle class level. And so ironically, by putting these freezes in place, it impacts almost everyone apart from the top 1%, which is strange for me because I do not agree with everything Labour says, but they are meant to represent the working person, right? So what does this mean for investors? Well, what it's moving towards is more of a renter's culture. Because if people net pound and pound in real terms are getting less in their pocket month on month, year on year, because of these freezes, what it means is there's going to be less allocated to savings, less allocated to deposits for purchasing properties, which increases the time frame of somebody renting. Now, let's say it increases how long you need to rent for 6 months. You might think not a big deal, right? Now apply that across an entire population. And think about it as people coming into the renters population and out of the renters population, right? The older you get, the more money you get, the more likely you're going to become a buyer. If that entire system is delayed by 6 months, it could increase the need and demand for rental properties by up to $250,000 a year. And if we've got another $250,000 a year of people stacking on top of people that need to rent, what do you think happens to rental prices? I'll leave that down to you. Here's another one. You'll love this. Pensions and ISAs. So they're talking about reforms in pensions and ISAs. So just so you know, pensions and ISAs are two of the best things about the UK system, I would say, from a financial point of view. So pensions are better than ISAs, but they're both pretty bloody good. Let me explain them. So an ISA is a tax-free wrapper where you can invest in a tax-free environment. So it's kind of delaying the overall tax, if you like, which is a huge impact on building your wealth. And at the moment, you have a £20,000 limit on your ISA. Now again, ideally that would be increasing each year in line with inflation, but they freeze it for a number of years, then they suddenly go, oh, we need to increase it, right? So I think when I was a kid it was 5 grand, but now it's 20 grand. Now that's really good. what that means is after I've had my income and got savings, it pushes people like us to invest, which is good because it takes less pressure on the state pension, which, let's face it, will not exist when I'm older. Pensions are pre-taxable. And what I mean by that is you can pay into your pension before paying income tax and before paying national insurance. You might not think of that too much, but it is a huge impact. And you can put up to £60,000 per tax year into your pension. Now, how many people can actually do that? Not many. But this is huge. So say you're a 40% taxpayer and you earn £60,000. Well, you're going to pay national insurance on that 60,000, right? So we're going to call it, for the sake of ease, 55 grand. And then you're also going to pay 40% tax on that, right? So you're now going to pay another 22,000 in tax. So that 60 grand become 55 grand. And then let's take off 40% of that 55, so 22 grand off of that. So now we're at 33,000 pounds. Or if I can survive without that extra money, I put 60 grand into pension and it is still 60 grand and I get to invest it. So what has the government got their plans on? Well, what they're talking about, and I laugh because you couldn't fucking make this up, is what they're planning on doing is capping the amount you can put in your pension at £2,000 per year, and everything above that they're going to apply national insurance on. So I don't feel great about that. Now, this is one that impacts the more wealthy than the working class, to be fair to them. So in their credence, that is aligned to helping out the working class individual. Give them that, right? Does it help people? No, it really doesn't. Now, what it does do is it plugs a short-term issue. Think logically. Let's say I'm going to get £10,000 and put it into a pension. Well, it just got worse to do it. And so what this does is it will, for those people that are going to plough the money in anyway, it will raise taxes, which is good because we need more money. What it will also do, though, is it will stop people putting money in their pension because it just got worse. And so it increases the likeliness people will pay themselves, which is good for the government because you'll then pay more taxes. But the other good thing is if you do take it out, you start spending more into the economy, which theoretically is good, apart from we're in a cost of living crisis. Follow me along here. If we're already in a cost of living crisis, why are we in a cost of living crisis? Well, because we're spending too much, factually. Because then our demand is higher than the supply, which is why prices go up. That's the only reason prices go up, is because people are willing to pay it. If you put more money into your bank, it increases the spend, which then increases the prices. So the cost of living crisis ends up going on and on. And then the problem is it puts upward pressure on companies to then pay people more because the cost of living is higher. But the problem is you've already increased the national insurance on the same bloody employers. You hopefully can see the dichotomy that's getting created. But that's not even the biggest problem. Thank you today and fuck you tomorrow is what comes to my mind. In that if you encourage this sort of behaviour, hopefully let me know in the comments, would you agree the state pension, i.e. the country looking after you retiring, is gone? I'm 34, I guarantee by the time I retire it's not going to be there for me. All right, so here's the challenge. We need to become more independent individuals. If you put taxes and implications in place that force people to take their money today and spend the money today and dissuade them from investing in the them of tomorrow, what the fuck do you think's going to happen in 30 to 50 years? I got a bit emotional there. The reason I get emotional is I am not saying I'm the most intelligent person. I guarantee there's things I've missed. I guarantee there's people correcting me on small bits in the comments already. And that's great because it induces debate, which is what is needed. But I don't like this dictatorship mentality of fallacy and lies that is going to destroy us. And so my overall stance on the government, not to get political, is that we need to spend less as a country, not tax more. I have never seen a country tax their way to growth. So these freezes and policy changes, if they do come into play, these are the ones I'm worried about most, because I think in order to save yourself, you have to invest and focus on your economy, not the economy. Now, as a property investor, I'm great. Because what's the biggest competition to investing in property? Well, stocks and shares within an ISA and stocks and shares within a pension, and they will get worse from this, which encourages investing in property. And by the way, if you are one of those people that want to take advantage of that, put grow in the comments. I'll send you a link and you can book in a one-to-one call with me or the team where we can get you started with property investing in 2026. I'm going to throw in a nice little one here. They are looking to either relieve VAT, reduce it, or remove it completely on energy bills. I really like this one personally because it is a blanket impact. I really hope they actually do this one, because I don't know about you, but the heating bill and electricity bill has been going up. And I think even as a wealthy person, that's really going to positively impact me and people that I know, but also tenants. Like, they could really do with it, man, because every other policy is directing towards increasing rents. The least we could do is reduce something. So if that does happen, I think that'd be a real good positive, and then hopefully it would mean more savings for people and more protection for themselves. So that's a nice little one. Let's see if it comes in, but I really like that one. Right, back to misery straight away. Property taxes. So I find this one interesting. I actually think this is a really smart play by the government. Fucking brutal, but smart if all you cared about was the money. So property taxes. All right. So this is a really interesting one in this week's budget, and I will be glued to see if they do anything around this. There could be a full reform around property tax, replacing stamp duty. So just so you've got an idea of the current stamp duty situation, those buying a property for less than 125, you don't pay stamp duty at all. First-time buyers don't pay it from 300 plus, depending on where you live. And then there's thresholds throughout these properties. So as I said, up to 125, it's 0, 125 to 250, it's 2%, 250 and a pound to 925 is 5%, 925 to 1.5 million is 10%, and then 1.5 million plus, it's 12%. What? Just to clarify, just like your income tax, that's not on the whole lot. It goes up in stages. And by the way, if you're buying as an investor, you add 5% on top of that. So fuck, it hurts, right? And I always say to people, the worst thing about stamp duty is you can't leverage it. And if you're a property investor, if you buy a 100 grand house, you only put down 25 grand, right? Because you leverage it as an investor. But here's the thing that I find really interesting. What they're talking about is scrapping stamp duty. I actually want to play this out. And I think overall, this is pretty good for everyone. So what they're talking about is one of two things. Number one, instead of paying stamp duty when you buy, it's when you sell. And I quite like that because the upfront cost of stamp duty is really prohibitive for people. But I'm not sure it's great for the economy. I just like the concept for me, if I'm honest, but I'll break it down. So let's say you're an investor buying, or sorry, somebody, a homeowner buying a 300k property. And let's say you're going to end up paying 7 grand, 7.5 grand in tax there. Well, that's quite a lot of money. If you were buying that house, what would you spend the money on otherwise? Maybe a new kitchen, maybe a new bathroom instead, which then goes into the local economy. And so it's creating this cycle. Or indeed, that 7,500 could be the difference between you being able to get on the market and not. If you look at the wealth distribution, not just in the UK, but across the world, it's baby boomers that hold a huge portion of the wealth because they bought here and it's gone like that with stocks, property, everything else, right? So here's the other thing that it does. It taxes older people. And I actually think this is a really, really smart play. Not a moral play and not a fair play maybe. This is not my personal opinion. But from a tax point of view, it's bloody smart. Let's face it, when you get to retirement, you're not really contributing too much. I'm sorry if you're watching this and you're retiring, but factually you're not. And by the way, my opinion, if you want it, is rightly so. You spent your entire life paying into a system and now you want to get your fair share of the system. But the reality is, once you're 70 plus, you're not really contributing to the economy in any significant way, right? Until You die, and hopefully there's inheritance tax, which for me is just a trust tax, because if you're paying inheritance tax, somebody didn't bloody trust you, because they should have given it to you earlier, right? But think about this logically. Now, when there's a house that's distributed, say I inherited £2 million worth of property, but it's across a load of siblings, well, now, how can they capture that tax? Well, if the person was smart, they gave it to me beforehand and made sure it was in share structure, so there's going to be no inheritance tax and no other tax. Whereas now, if I sold it, it then creates a tax in there, which I kind of like. The next thing they're looking to do is potentially paying an annual tax on it. And so, for example, it might be 1% of the property value. I do like this because this does impact the wealth hierarchy, which, as much as I am going to be negatively impacted, I think it's good. I do think that's a good idea. So it might be 1% of the value. The challenge that I have with that is that the amount you pay can become prohibitive. So say you buy that £300,000 house and then they charge you 1% of that. Well, that's £3,000 a year. I don't know many people that are buying a £300,000 house that could comfortably suffer another £3,000 a year. You can let me know if you can. The worst thing for this is, again, for renters. Because say this happens for investors, what this will mean is, well, who ultimately pays? And I know if you're a renter, well, don't fucking charge us then. You've got the power to do it. Yeah, I do, but it's a business. And ultimately, if I'm going to work my bollocks off to earn money to invest in property, then I need an ROI on that. And so those costs ultimately get passed on to tenants. So that's bad. That's bad. But for the distribution of wealth and getting in, I think it's a really smart play overall. Two more I want to focus on. Number one is council tax, and then a little bit more of a geeky one that I'll try to keep simple. So council tax changes. This is really interesting, and it fucked me off when I saw that new knobhead from Green Party, and I'm sorry, that is the only political view I'm going to have. So basically, when they're talking about changing council tax, but I'll explain it, right? The reason it annoys me is that we're all treated like idiots, right? So why do you pay council tax? Well, it's for my bins, right? And it's for my local church, if there's a church, and it's to pay for the roads around my area. Okay, well, we all know that's bullshit and it's all one big pot, right? But if you ever wanted a government to prove that it's bullshit, they would do something like this. So council tax at the moment has a banding system, I believe from A to H, but there might be some more, but A to H, right? And in general, it has to do with the potential size of your household and your location, right? So cost of salaries in London is going to be very different to the northeast. And of course, if you've got a 7-bedroom house, it's fair to assume that there's going to be an amount of people that put increased pressure on there. Now, I already hate council tax as a concept anyway, because I don't know about you, if you own a 7-bed property or a 1-bed flat, the binmen seem to come at a certain point each week or every other week. They don't seem to come 7 days a week for the 7-house property, right? But anyway, let's not go there. But here's the thing that they're looking to do it. They're looking to do it on the value of the property. So the difference that they gave, and I found this really interesting, this was the example. So they were down south in Erith, and they were like, this 5-bed house in Erith, which is like your typical middle-class home, they pay £4,000 a year in council tax, give or take, right? And they go, and now there's this £28 million 2-bed flat, and they also pay £4,000 in council tax. How outrageous is that? This person with the £28 million house should definitely be paying more than you're like, Why? This is the thing that I fucking hate about the UK, and I really hate this, is, I said this to somebody the other day, we need somebody to hate, all right? It's the best way of bringing a country together, is to create debate and hate something, hate somebody, right? In the US, it's politics. So over in the US, there's this big, like, are you a liberal or are you a Democrat? In the UK, it's poor versus the rich. And it worked really well because the poor was all of us, right? All of us. And the rich were the aristocrats. And so there was such a huge divide that it was like aristocracy and all of that. The challenge is that now you might consider somebody the rich that's earning 80 grand a year. Now you might go, they've clearly done well for themselves, they've got a better life, but that is not somebody that is rich. That is somebody that's doing well for themselves, but I guarantee they are feeling the same pain in different ways to you. And this is the thing that really fucks me off. Now, don't get me wrong, that probably 80 grand person is not in the 28 million pound. But fuck mine. When as a country are we going to stop just going, you've done really well for yourself. Now I'm going to fuck you. And it's like, oh, you've worked so hard to be able to do that. Now, by the way, I'm not saying the person that's bought a 300k house doesn't work hard. That is not what I'm saying. But in order to be part of earning the 1%, in general, you probably need to represent 1% traits. I'm not saying everyone there, but most people that are earning the top 1%, it's because they have 1% traits, which is work ethic, intelligence, built their connections, network well, and everything that comes into it. Not everyone, so don't hate me on that. Why do we constantly want to push away people at the top? So there's this famous analogy, which I'll share and probably butcher here. So 10 friends go to the pub and they get a round of 10 pints and they pay £10 for the round. I know it's already ridiculous, right? It's £1 in London, one pint in London, but we've got 10 pints there, £10. And they go, right, you're the richest, you earn £5, pay £5 towards it. They go, amazing. And then what happens is the next person pays £3, then the next people pay like 50p, and then the bottom like 40%, they don't pay anything, they get their free pints. And they go, amazing, this is brilliant. And the barman, after a year or two, goes, do you know what? You're really loyal customers. I want you to stay here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a £1 saving. I go, brilliant. So now you're going to get 10 pints for £9. And they go, yeah. So how should we distribute this? Right? Well, what they do is the person that's been paying £5 goes, well, I'll save 50 pence of that pound saving. And then you get 30 pence and you get 20%. And you four that got your pint for free, you're still going to get it for free. And the person that earns and pays the most goes, yeah, that seems reasonable. And the people, as you work down, get more and more angry. And so the people that got their pints free go, hold on, I get nothing from this. And they all beat up the person that paid the most money for the pints. And then what happens is the next day they turn up for the pints, and the person that earned the most and paid the most end up not turning up. And they realise that now they're getting 9 pints, not 10. But now they need the 9 pints, and now they need to pay £8 something. And they realise they can't afford it. And I really like this analogy because it represents what we're doing to the wealthiest individuals. Is the wealthiest individuals can take a harder punch financially, obviously. But if we keep having this mindset of attack the rich for the sole reason that they have accumulated wealth, you will find what is happening already. Millionaires and billionaires leaving the country. And if you're naive enough to reply to that and say, well, good, great, who's paying for the infrastructure? Who's paying down the government debt? Who's funding all of this? Because the top 1% of the country pays 50% of the tax. And by the way, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. In many ways, it makes logical sense. But when does a rich person go 50%'s enough? 55%'s taking the piss. 60%? Starting to wind me up now. 65%? I'm just going to move the entire wealth that I created in somebody else's country. And that is the thing that is dangerous. Final thing I want to talk about is a little bit geeky, but it is the fiscal gap and market gap analysis. So this is a credibility risk. The OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, essentially looks at bonds, which is the bonds are the debt of the country. Okay, and you want the country to be investable. The way that the Western world functions is on debt, rightly or wrongly, all right? And if you are a trustworthy country, you have a really good rating on your bonds, your debt. And so you become somebody that can be invested in. All makes sense, right? We operate as a country kind of like a business, just not a greatly run one from time to time. So why is this important? Well, because if you remember Liz Truss, famous Liz Truss, who reduced the bit of tax on people earning 150k or more, which is one of the most stupid things I've ever seen, by the way, because it benefits so few people but pisses off so many. And what happened is the OBR says, we're not that trustworthy. People start perceiving us differently. And so then what happens? The value of the pound drops. Here's what I genuinely think will happen if half of what they're talking about becomes a reality tomorrow, is the trust in our bond market goes down, therefore our rating goes down, therefore yields go up, which means the value of the bond goes down. A lot of technical bullshit there, right? In essence, people don't like us anymore. The value of the pound goes down, which is good for foreign investors. Why is it good? Well, because they're not buying in a pound, they are transferring their currency for our currency. And often we get disillusioned with this and we go, well, a pound's a pound, right? Who cares if it goes up or down? Well, foreign investors do. If the value of a pound, let's say you can buy a dollar with a pound, and now to get a dollar, I need to pay £1.20 to get a dollar. The same happens the other way around. If a dollar is a pound, but then the value of the pound goes down, then what will mean now, if for each dollar they put in, they might get £1.20. So if they were going to buy a £100,000 property for $100,000, but now they transfer the $100,000, it's $120,000. So they're getting a built-in discount when they're going. And so I think that will happen. I think the pound will dip tomorrow. Only temporarily, maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, but what you will suddenly see is a lot of people buying the pound and investing in the UK property market, which is interesting considering the US funds that have just bought billions of UK real estate. And I think we're going to see a big shift there. Ultimately, we're fucked. I'm sorry to finish there. We need reform of the government. We really do. We need to overhaul how we approach the leadership. When I was younger, Labour represented the working person, Conservatives represented the middle class and upper middle class. And I think this is why parties like Reform and the Green Party suddenly have the platform they're able to stand on, rightly or wrongly. Because I think the Labour government have lost touch of who they're meant to represent. I think the Conservatives have lost touch with who they're meant to represent. Now, I don't really give political views, so I'm not anti anyone. I'm just sharing my opinion on what happens right now. The main thing is, what are you going to do about it? Well, what I'm going to do about it is focus on how I react. The reality is, as much as every vote matters, not really, because the politicians are willing to say whatever it takes to get voted in. So honestly, most of our votes are picking the lesser evil of who's in front of us. I really do believe that. So the only thing you can do is focus on how we react to the situation. And I'm going to do a video when this comes out as my live reaction and how much of this has come to reality and what I'm going to do about it. But in every single thing over the last decade, I've been saying this, and I mean it now more than ever. You need to stop focusing on the government, stop focusing on the economy. You need to start focusing on your economy, taking control and adapting to the situation. Those that thrive in these situations are people that focus on themselves and how they react to it. You can bitch about the tax, you can moan about Reeves, you can moan about all the changes that's going on right now, but the reality is we have a set of information that's going to be available to us tomorrow. You'll have the same set of information, and then I will adapt and take advantage of the situation. Here's the unfair advantage that I've got, is I've now got money behind me so I can take more advantage of change. But guess what? 10 years ago, I was 33,000 in debt, which might be more similar to your situation, and you might be anything in between. But I promise you, no matter if you're watching this in debt or a multimillionaire, you can take advantage of change, because change creates fear, which then creates that in the masses, but it also creates opportunity for those willing to take advantage. I hope this has been insightful. We'll see what actually happens tomorrow. For those that are ready to, no matter what happens tomorrow, take full advantage of this change, put GROW in the comments, book in a one-to-one call, and make 2026 your economy year. I hope this has been valuable. Hit subscribe and the notification bell, and look out for more videos on what actually comes out in the budget, and I'm going to analyze and give guidance on every single one.